I spent the last 90 days immersed in the world of Dune. I read the books and I watched all of the movies. But when I was done, I wanted more. So I did what every good artist does. I let my mind stay in the world of Dune and I started to draw from imagination. But wait. Let me explain you what I mean by imagination. Because it's something that can feel really hard to do if you don't know the little tricks that artists use to make it easier. I use a very specific method of imagination, which I like to call the Traveller Sketchbook Method, and you'll see why in a moment. But if you follow this method, it will feel like a game. So you're gonna end up drawing a lot and filling an entire sketchbook, in my case, without even realizing it. The method is really simple. I can teach it to you in literally one sentence, and I'm gonna do that now. But what I wanted to do in this video is to show you in practice how it looks like with the example of Dune. Alright? So, the Traveller Sketchbook Method consists in simply pretending that you are a traveler that is visiting Dune for the first time. But instead of taking pictures of the place, you document your journey with drawings in your sketchbook. It's useful to start with a sketch of a map of the place that you're visiting. So I landed here in Arrakeen. It's in the North Pole region of the planet, but there's no ice nor snow. Dune has very little water, even inside the cities. And my guide picked me up and brought me very quickly outside of the city because he was in a rush to get out of there. And from the outside, I managed to take these sketches of how the imperial colonial architecture looks like, and it's very cleverly thought through. It's made to be very imposing on purpose to intimidate the locals, but from high up, from space, it's almost impossible to see the cities because they preserved the features of the landscape on top of the rooftops of the structures. You can still spot them through the shadows that these structures cast, especially in the evening. And those shadows are quite interesting because they create more favorable conditions for life. And I've managed to see one of the few plants that are in Dune. This is the hollow cactus. I sketched it because it's very interesting how it works. At night, when the temperature drops, the water that is in the warmer air that is trapped inside of the hollow cactus condenses against the inner walls of the thin shell. And then it's collected down into a central basin and made to drip very slowly to quench the various sections of the roots. And I even managed to see a kangaroo mouse that made its way on the side of a hollow cactus and carving a small hole past its very long tail into it to soak up as much water as possible with his sponge-like fluff at the end of the tail. And it's called kangaroo mouse, but really it doesn't hop. It walks in a rather strange, uneven way without any rhythm, and that's the safest way to walk when you're out on open sand to avoid attracting the apex predator of Dune, the sandworm. This is when I saw one for the first time. My guide brought me to the edge of the hunting ground of one of the smallest sandworms, and it scared the shit out of me, even though I was well out of reach. Unlike my guide that went all the way to the edge of the hunting ground. It's hard to capture how colossal and majestic these creatures are. But even though they're so big, they move through sand as if they were effortlessly swimming through water. But I have this theory that they are actually attached to a larger body that must be fixed somewhere deep under the desert. And there's several reasons for that. For one, you never see the tail end of a sandworm, and that's suspicious. But then there's also the consideration of how far the sandworm is able to sense you walking. Much further than the distance that the vibration from your steps should be able to travel, especially more closer to the surface where the sand is less dense. But at deeper layers where the sand is more compact, vibrations can travel further and faster, but it's impossible to move at those depths. Plus, I've also plotted the attacks of each sandworm that we've seen, and it forms almost perfectly circular hunting grounds. So So it makes sense that the sandworm has a body that is clamped deep on the rock bed under the desert, and just sensing for any potential prey trespassing within reach of the mouse that can travel faster on the surface sand. It's an interesting theory, but I wasn't able to discuss it at all with my guide, because sandworms are a bit of a holy creature. But I did manage to discuss this quite in detail. It's the traditional outfit that every Fremen wears outside in the desert. It's called a steel suit, and it's made so that you will never be thirsty out in the desert. Speaking of which, I am quite thirsty right now. God, so I finished all the water. Let me try a trick that I learned from the Fremens. Oof. That's coffee. Much better than water. Worked. Anyway, where were we? The steel suit. It's a surprisingly complicated piece of technology. It's made so that it collects as much of the body's water through sweat, urine, and even the moisture in your breath, and purifies it back into drinkable water and stores it here in these water tanks on the back of the suit. The whole system is powered mechanically through a spring-loaded mechanism that is under the heels. So all you need to do is just walk and you'll be able to recycle up to 72% of your body's water. It's quite incredible, and it's also quite comfortable, because I've been given one after a couple of weeks because I was going through my water too quickly. Even though I have these water coupons certified by House Atreides. 12 liters of water is worth a lot of money on Dune. But I wasn't able to use them because they're only exchangeable in one of the major cities, and my guide was bringing me exactly on the opposite direction. We're kind of in the middle of nowhere right now. I kept asking to go back or at least head towards one of the major cities, but my guide would deflect my questions by just showing me very cool stuff that he knew that I would be drawing in my sketchbook, like his very own sandstorm beetle. Every Fremen keeps one, and it's kind of a pet of sorts, but it's more than that. In exchange of protection and water, the sandstorm beetle is able to sense the formation of sandstorms and even predict the direction and the strength, so that you have ample time to prepare beforehand. And it's more than a utilitarian bond, because they like to decorate the carapace, and my guide even sculpted a portrait on the back of it. I asked the meaning of it one night, but we were interrupted by a very, very bright flash, followed by an impossibly loud thunder, and then everything started to shake. We went out from our tent, and this is where we saw this. A nuclear mushroom cloud, scorching the beautiful night sky of Dune. Arrakeen had been attacked, probably destroyed. One of the worst acts of war in centuries. And that's when I realized that my guide probably knew something and was trying to get us as far as possible from the city. But now, I was stranded on the desert planet. Oof. Let's make another espresso. But you've seen how the Traveller Sketchbook Method makes it fun and easy to come up with drawing ideas so that you can spend more time practicing and improving your skills. Plus, I really enjoy that feeling of being immersed into another universe while I'm drawing. Of course, you're gonna need to find a universe that inspires you, like Dune did it for me. But if you feel completely uninspired, then I suggest you watch my Iceland video here, because I go through a simple 3-step process to get you out of an art block and come back more creative than ever. It works for me, so I think chances are that it's gonna be helpful for you too. Enjoy! Wow.